Photography can be expensive, and what's a shock to a lot of new photographers are that lenses are often the most expensive part. To get a nice set of first-party lenses, we're talking thousands of dollars. But they are also, of course, arguably the most important part of image quality, besides being a good photographer. But if you're cheap like me, there's good news. There are great lenses out there that are optically fantastic, but won't break the bank. So here are 9 of my favorite lenses of all time that you can actually afford. I'm gonna put this down now. It's the biggest lens I own. I thought it looked impressive. When you buy your first camera, it'll often come with a cheap, moderate zoom, nothing special lens, and these are often referred to as kit lenses. These are usually 18 to 55 millimeters for APS-C cameras, 18 to 135 millimeter for a fancier kit. Some more niche cameras will be kitted with something else, like this Samsung NX Mini's 9 millimeter pancake. Either way, these are awful, and you should just throw them away as soon as you get them. I'm just kidding. The truth is, especially nowadays, most kit lenses are at worst decent and at best actually really capable lenses. Even my plasticky Pentax 18 to 55 millimeter kit lens that was bundled with my first cheap DSLR served me just fine for years before I picked up my first upgraded lens. I personally really love the 18 to 135 millimeter type lenses. I've had the one from Pentax and from Canon. These are fantastic lenses. You can get it for $100. Some of my favorite landscape shots were taken on this lens. And I asked all of you for kit lens suggestions, and there were some great ones from Fujifilm and Panasonic and others that kept coming up over and over again. So there are some good kit lenses out there. And if anyone makes fun of you for shooting a kit lens, send them my way. Okay, but you're ready to upgrade from your kit lens, or at least you just want a faster lens. When I first started building out my camera kit on a budget years ago, I loved these Rokinon and Samyang manual focus Chinese lenses. I still kind of do. They were only a few $100s a piece, but some of them were optically on par with $1,000 lenses. So a few years later, more brands joined in, and we have some really fun manual focus primes from TT Artisan, 7 Artisans, and more that I've shared on this channel before. But even more exciting to me is that in the last 2 years or so, these same brands are making some great affordable lenses, but now with autofocusing capabilities, and they are outstanding. And one of the best brands doing this right now is Viltrox, who sponsored this video and exploration into my best favorite affordable lenses. And this is one of them. This is their brand new 56mm f1.2 autofocusing lens for Fujifilm. Not only does it have great autofocus and a huge f1.2 aperture, it also has a manual clicked aperture ring, so it goes along great with the manual control, aesthetic, and experience of using a Fujifilm. It has a great full metal build quality, and it's fully weather sealed. But most importantly, optically, it's superb. Even wide open at f1.2, I threw an ND filter on it and was shooting it outside, wide open all the way, no issues with sharpness. So you don't have to choose between getting that fantastic background separation and sharpness. But the best part about this lens and why it makes it into this video is that it is less than half the cost of the official Fujifilm lens while still maintaining all of that quality. And this is super exciting for us budget photographers. So if you want to check out what just might be the new best portrait lens for Fujifilm, especially on a budget, then check out the link in my description. This next lens is almost as cheap as we'll get in this video. I have one more lens that's cheaper. This is the Pentax 35mm f2.4 lens. And don't worry if you're not shooting Pentax, because there's lenses like this in other brands. These kinds of lenses are cheap beginner prime lenses, usually 35mm or 50mm, and they're just the most plasticky things you've ever held. And they're fantastic. Plastic fantastics, as they're known. And what I love about these lenses is that they're usually the cheapest way to get an autofocusing fast aperture lens for new photographers. And despite their plastic build quality, they are optically really good. And I think part of that is that these optical designs are really old and time tested, so making a good one doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. A nice Easter egg with this Pentax 35mm f2.4 is that it's sold as an APS-C lens, but it actually covers the frame of my full-frame Pentax K1 really well for a sneaky cheap 35mm autofocus lens option. Plastic fantastics. I'm saving the absolute cheapest lens for the last in this video, but this next lens is a lens that I think every photographer should have. This is my Pentax 100mm f2.8 macro lens, and there's a few things that make this lens special. Once again, if you're in other camera mounts, you can find this kind of lens for any mount. Now, this lens may seem a little niche, but it's actually one of the most versatile lenses you can buy. The 100mm focal length is great for macro shots, as it gives you more of a working distance than a 50mm macro, but it also makes a nice telephoto length for portraits, which can look really flattering at this focal length. A brand new one might be several $100s, but look a few generations back and you can get one that is much cheaper and still stellar optically. If you're ever stuck in a creative rut and you need something weird and different to spur your creativity, this next set of lenses is for you. These are weird lenses, and some of my favorite weird lenses are these Nikonos lenses for underwater film cameras that can focus and change apertures using these side knobs. I made a free 3D printable adapter you can use for Fujifilm or Sony mirrorless. Have at it. I also love these extra tiny Pentax Auto 110 lenses that cover the Micro Four Thirds sensors, but also some cover the APS-C frame pretty well. And staying tiny for a minute, another small set of lenses are just any C or D mount lenses. Now here you have to do a little bit more research and playing around to find the ones that will cover the sensor size you're going for, but they are a ton of fun and usually only 10 to 20 bucks a piece. You have anything from vintage Cine lenses to modern CCTV lenses and everything in between. This is a cheap tilt lens, and they make tilt and shift lenses as well. These used to be thousands of dollars, but now there's a bunch of them out there that you can buy for only a couple hundred or less than 100. And these allow you to manually change the focus plane and perspective of the photo you are taking, which have practical applications, but you can also just mess with it for creative effect. These modern third-party ones are super cheap, or you can also buy adapters to tilt shift any adapted lenses. I haven't tried these yet, but it looks pretty fun. And then this lens is funny. There's some DIY guides out there for making a tilt kind of lens out of an old lens and a bike inner tube to get some really wacky effects. That's one of the first DIY photography projects I ever did as a teenager. This next lens is one I believe every photographer should absolutely have in their bag at some point. It might be your first upgrade from your kit lens. It's one of the cheapest lenses you can buy and also performs fantastic, and that's a nifty 50. These are fast 50mm lenses. They used to be the standard kit lens on a 35mm film camera. Most of the time, that's where most of them come from. You can get modern versions, you can get vintage versions. These vintage versions are extra cheap. Some of them come with a lot of extra character as well, and some of them are just optically fantastic. My personal favorites of all time are the Pentax M 50mm f1.7 for its small size, its great optics, and its cheap price. The Fujinon 55mm f1.8 is maybe lesser known, but I think even better. And I've owned a 58mm Helios that was great. Those are especially well loved for their swirly bokeh. This is the type of lens I've owned the most of. I've probably owned a dozen or more 50mm lenses that are fast. And honestly, I don't think there's been a dud in any of them. You basically can't go wrong, but if you do a little research, you can find a really nice one for pretty cheap. Stay with me, if you will, in the vintage lens realm as we look at what I think is possibly the most underrated lens of all time, or at least category of lenses. And that's these inexpensive, kind of no big flashy spec vintage zoom lenses. They're kind of generic, especially if you look at the numbers. They don't have large apertures or anything flashy, but some of them are optically very good, but they're not all good. So some of them are actually quite bad, and maybe that's why they get a bad reputation. So it's a bit of a treasure hunt, but do some quick searching around and you can find a diamond in the rough. My favorites so far are this Nikkor 35-105D lens. I would have never even given this lens a chance, except that one of you gifted it to me a while back, and it's been stellar. Sharp across the range and super reliable. This Minolta 70mm to 210mm f4 lens is also awesome and great for the price. It kind of has its own cult following. They call it the beer can, but it has a constant f4 zoom. It zooms internally, which is pretty cool, especially for what you're getting here. And then of course, most importantly, optically, it's awesome. And it was super cheap to buy. Also, I'm a Pentax guy, so I have to throw out the Pentax A 35-105 f3.5. I promise the absolute cheapest and incredible lens that you'll love. That'll come right after this one. Stick with me for a minute for an odd one. I don't know how many other photographers would put this lens in their top lenses of all time, but it is in my top 3 favorite lenses of all time. And I think you would really like it as well. This is the Pentax 300mm f4 lens. And like the 100mm macro, it seems at first like a one-trick pony, but it's absolutely not. And I think you would get more use out of it than you think. You don't normally think of f4 as really fast, but because it's such a telephoto lens, you're gonna blur the background to oblivion of most things you take a picture of. It's also really compact for its range and aperture size because it's a prime and not a zoom. Nikon, Canon, and Sony have others, and they've made them for decades, so they're not tough to find on the used market. They're obviously great for things like wildlife, especially when you need that wide open aperture, but you don't have thousands of dollars. The stars and astrophotography as well. This lens actually focuses incredibly close for what it is, so you can get large insects really up close. If you've never tried one before, maybe at least find a friend that has one and give it a shot one day. I I think you'll fall in love. Okay, finally, here's the cheapest lens out of this list that I think you'll really love, but it's gonna require a little bit of DIY skills. There's this sort of middle of the range compact 35mm film camera genre that aren't crazy expensive like the Contax T whatever, but also have fantastic lenses like those cameras. You can find any number of them by looking at sites like Lomography and finding a lens that has rendering you like. And then the next step is go online and find that camera for sale but broken. Like I paid $15 total for this old Minolta that has a fantastic lens. I didn't feel bad about destroying it because the camera was broken beyond repair. So I took the lens out of the camera and made an adapter to attach to my mirrorless camera. And this can be done in many ways. I decided to 3D print the adapter because I know how to do that, but you can also just take an old lens cap and drill a hole in it and start there. The uglier, the better. And this lens rules and is so fun to shoot. There's tons of character. I can't stop it down, so it's always wide open. It's actually decently sharp in the center despite all that. And I plan to keep on doing this with more cameras that I find that are going to the garbage but have fantastic lenses. It's just such a fun project. Get a little collection going. There you go, those are my lenses. What lenses would you add to the list? If you want to see more of these weird lenses up close in a video, I did a video a couple months ago right here. I think you'll really like that. I'll see you over there, and until next time, as always, happy snapping.